everyone, welcome to our first video about the characteristics of life. So this class is called biology, but what does that mean? Well, biology is the study of all living things, and you can see here that can be organized on a lot of different levels. Like biosphere is huge, and then you have biomes and ecosystems and populations and organisms and organ systems and organs and tissues and cells. But let's talk a little bit more before we get into what makes something a living thing, how are living things organized? So we have touched on this already in our ecology modules, and that was way back at the beginning of the year. So I just want to refresh your memory. When we talk about living things, we can talk about them on many different levels of organization. So the first thing that you could actually consider to be a living thing would be a cell. These other things, atoms and molecules, you might talk more about them in chemistry or physical science class, and they build up to make organelles, which are parts of cells. But according to the cell theory, the smallest unit of structure and function for all living things is the cell. And when you have a bunch of cells that are similar to each other, they form tissues. And when you have a bunch of tissues that are related to one another, they can form organs like a brain. And when you have a bunch of organs that are working together, like your brain and also all of those nerve endings that go throughout your body, your spinal cord, you have an organ system. And then when you combine your organ systems, like your nervous system, your digestive system, circulatory, respiratory, immune systems, all these different systems in your body, you get a whole organism. Now, a bunch of those exact same organisms living in the same place are going to be considered a population, which is just a group of organisms of the same species in the same place. Those populations then become part of a community, and communities involve more than one species. So that can mean in a kelp forest community, it could be the kelp, it could be fish, seals, crabs, many different living organisms that live in the kelp community. Different communities will then make up an ecosystem. So the bunch of giant kelp forests in other communities could make up the Southern California coast ecosystem. Those ecosystems could come together to make biomes, and then all life on Earth is contained within the biosphere. So our levels of organization go all the way from cells to tissues to organ systems to organisms to populations, communities, ecosystems, and biospheres. So here is a short video I'm just going to show you to really drive home that point. Here you go.
Life on Earth is organized into different levels based on degree of complexity. These levels range from the very small and simple, like the atom, to the very large and complex, such as the biosphere. They're organized into a type of hierarchy, with the larger levels enveloping the smaller levels, sort of like Russian nesting dolls. In this tutorial, we'll examine the complexity of life at the cellular, organismal, and populational levels of biological organization. Cellular organization begins with the atom, which is the basic unit of matter. Atoms combine with other atoms to form molecules, which in turn can combine to form macromolecules, like the DNA shown here, which is used to store hereditary information. Atoms, molecules, and macromolecules combine to form structures within cells, such as organelles, which are tiny compartments of eukaryotic cells. Each organelle has a specific cellular function. The nucleus, for example, is an organelle used for the storage of DNA. Atoms, molecules, macromolecules, and organelles all combine to form a cell. A cell is the smallest level of organization that can be considered alive, and therefore is considered the smallest unit of life. At the organismal level, cells are organized into 4 levels of complexity. Cells combine to form tissues, which are groups of cells that act as a unit and perform a specific function. For example, cardiac muscle is a type of animal tissue that has the ability to contract. Tissues are grouped into organs that also perform specific functions. The heart, for example, is an organ composed of cardiac muscle tissue that contracts in order to circulate blood within the body of an animal. Organs, in turn, work together in organ systems. The circulatory system, for example, consists of the heart, blood, and blood vessels that all work together to move nutrients to the cells of the body and remove waste materials from these same cells. And finally, various organ systems work together to form a complex organism, such as a human. The organization of life also extends beyond the level of individual organisms. The next level of organization is a population, which is a group of similar organisms living in the same place. A group of persons living in your hometown will be considered a population. All the populations of a particular kind of organism together form a species. Members of a species are similar in appearance and are able to interbreed. The modern species of humans, to which we all belong, is referred to as Homo sapiens. The next level of organization is a community, which consists of multiple different species occupying the same region. Humans, for example, typically share their neighborhoods with dogs, cats, birds, trees, grasses, and numerous other species. When communities interact with parts of the non-living environment, like water, gases, soil, and climate, they form what's referred to as an ecosystem. Collectively, all of the ecosystems on the planet make up the biosphere. The biosphere contains all parts of the Earth, from the atmosphere to underground and to the deepest trenches in the ocean where life is possible.
So, how do we know if something is actually a living thing? In fact, all of these different things that you see on this picture are considered living things, but they're all really different. So, how can you just make some general statements about what is a living thing? Well, there are 8 characteristics of living things that you need to know for this class, and those things actually apply to all of these. We have bacteria here, paramecium, which is a type of protist, fungus, plants, and these are both animals, even though they are very different. So, the 8 characteristics of living things that you need to know for this class are that living things are made up of cells, they can reproduce, they're based on a universal genetic code like DNA, they grow and develop, they obtain and use materials and energy, they respond to their environments, and they maintain stable internal environments, which is called homeostasis. And as a group, living things can change over time. In our next video, we will look at those first 4 characteristics, and then in our last video, we'll look at the last 4. Thanks for listening.